If you've been paying any attention to the news lately, you'll have noticed that things are pretty bad. All around our society, the organizations we built to make our lives easier are failing us. There are only 6 years left before climate change becomes irreversible, and it is evident from the COVID-19 crisis that our government can't handle any deadly crisis. Neither party has had an adequate response to COVID-19 or the Delta variant, and they only seem to care about us around election year. We're supposed to live in a free country, but democracy stops at the door to your job, where you have to serve an overpaid tyrant. Institutions like the police are full of corruption and actually do very little to protect and serve us. Time and time again, these structures are failing us and abandoning us in our time of need. It turns out that these problems are all connected. That is because of the way most structures in our lives are built as hierarchies. Power structures essentially look like this: a pyramid with a few individuals at the top making all the decisions, hoarding all the power, and getting paid the most. The bottom of the pyramid has the most people, and so the higher-ups can regard those at the bottom like expendable numbers. The inherent flaw of a hierarchy is that the power of those at the top is easy to abuse, and those at the bottom are easy to exploit. Even if you get lucky and a nice person is in charge of your job, local government, or apartment complex, there's always the chance that they will leave the position to a new tyrant. Even worse, hierarchies are very resistant to change from the inside or the outside, because those with the power to change things most have the strongest incentives to keep the structure stable. So, what can we do to solve these problems? Well, the most efficient method out there is called dual power. So when we talk about dual power groups, we're talking about organizations that were built by the people and whose aim is to replace inadequate hierarchies. Today, we can define it like this: the act of setting up dual power is the process of spotting the problems that hierarchies refuse to deal with and addressing them together by forming new structures and coalitions where mutual aid is guaranteed and everyone is truly equal. A flat structure. Today, we are going to talk about the best tools at our disposal to build a better future together. The core steps of building dual power are simple. 1. We build new structures from the ground up to address the problems of the people. 2. We replace and delegitimize the existing power structures, which are hierarchies. 3. We empower these structures and all those that reject hierarchies. We do so by connecting together as many dual power groups as we can, so that we can address larger problems. I want to provide an example. Let's say you identified a problem in your community with police brutality. This is a wild example. Everyone realized this in 2020. Too many people are being shot by law enforcement, and the cops are useless if your car or your house gets broken into. So, what can you do? The first step you need to take is to bring the problem up with people of your community and organize a structure to ultimately replace the police. What solutions you come up with will depend on your situation and your community, but in this case, you could form a neighborhood watch. I'm not talking about the racist neighborhood watches of fancy white suburbans here. I'm talking about a group with the skills necessary to help the people better than the police do. Skills like how to de-escalate dangerous situations non-violently, help someone with mental health problems who is going through an episode without shooting them or their dogs. Skills like how to help you replace your things if someone broke into your house. As your dual power structure gains popularity and local support, there will be less and less support to the incompetent power structures that you are replacing. With enough organizing, your grassroots group will eventually replace the police in legitimacy and in practice, and that is our core goal in a dual power movement. If such a group were to get the immense budget that cities grant to law enforcement, it would empower the entire community to solve their problems. The last step is to connect dual power groups with one another to work united in creating a better society. A dual power group could be a lot of different things depending on where they operate. At work, we will form unions to replace management and buy back the businesses and redistribute pay equally. At home, we will build tenants unions, raise money with rent strikes, and buy back apartment complexes so that we don't have to pay landlords for doing literally nothing. In local government, we will build associations that cannot be corrupted or infiltrated because everyone involved is actually equal to all of our members. In order to work and serve the people like they are meant to, dual power structures must follow some essential rules. 1. None is above the other. This is a rejection of the hierarchies present all over the capitalist world. A dual power group may have official positions that members fill, but these roles shouldn't grant any more power. If there's the need for quick decision making, a coordinator can be chosen to organize the group, but this position must be temporary and relinquished when the need is gone. When the need for finances arises, whoever is given the task of managing them must be absolutely transparent to other members about spending and provide proof of any transaction to the group's archives. 2. By the people, for the people, and in the name of the people. Decisions that affect the dual power group must be taken together, and they must be made in the spirit of improving everyone's lives. If the dual power group is formed around an existing community, for example, the tenants union of an apartment complex, only people who live there may take part in the decisions that concern the community. If people from other communities desire the participation and representation that you get from a union, you are encouraged to help them form those unions. You are encouraged to help them build their own local tenants union so that they can get the same benefits that you got. 3. Reject all hierarchies. Historically, hierarchies deal in broken promises. Nations will sign peace accords and laws only to back out whenever they can. Landlords promise to provide housing if the city gives them construction help, but all they actually do is keep houses empty to drive up the rent. Bosses will promise that if you work hard enough, you will earn a higher spot in the company. These are all empty promises, and we must not believe the lies. That includes banks. If we take out loans to buy our apartment complexes, we're only treating a landlord who has to fix the utilities for one who doesn't. We cannot come to an agreement with hierarchies, and so we must try to replace them, not work with them. 4. Positions are assigned through lottery and cannot be held for longer than a year. Though this may seem a little bit undemocratic at first, the system gives power to all. All who wish to fill a position in the dual power group must add their name to a lottery, and they will be picked randomly. This allows all to take turns seeing the inner workings of the dual power group. It also prevents time-consuming elections that can be rigged, and it prevents corruption since no one holds the position long enough for bribes to be worthwhile. For after someone leaves a position, they may not place their name in the lottery for the duration that they held the position. This ensures a fair rotation of the roles. Quick sidebar, here are examples of positions a union can set up. Outreach seeks out other dual power groups for local help or advice. A note-taker records what is said in meetings and then publishes the notes in a place absent union members can access. A treasurer manages and makes available the finances of the dual power group, and a scheduler can use tools like doodle.com to set up meetings so that as many union members as possible can participate. 5. Move at the speed of trust. Hierarchies will always try to undermine and delegitimize dual power groups, no matter how many people back them up. There will be efforts to infiltrate, spy, and destroy your dual power groups that must be resisted. Members of a dual power group must protect themselves and the group. Our movement cannot move faster than the speed of trust, or we will be undermined. This means that individual members should have a discreet and wary attitude when it comes to matters of the union. There is a good chance that other members of the union are engaging in illegal activities. Many tenants have pets they shouldn't, or live with more people in one apartment than the lease allows. That is actually a good thing for the union since crime lowers property value and rent. It is recommended that you act like a suspicious member of a thieves' guild when it comes to matters of the union. For example, secrecy is one of the best tools at a workers' union to avoid union busters and getting fired. That's why I'm using a filter on my face. I don't want to be recognized. 6. An inclusive group must make space for the minorities of the community. Members of the LGBTQIA community, racial minorities, people with disabilities, and other vulnerable groups are extremely important to a dual power group as they bring awareness of issues that the majority is often blind to. But these voices might not feel safe to express themselves so fully, and so we must make our dual power groups actively inclusive, which means banning hate speech from the meetings and excluding bigots from the group. If you are going to have a position that regulates hate speech in your union, we recommend that you have multiple positions, and we encourage that the most privileged members of the union to leave this position to other people. That means if you look like me, a white guy, you probably want to avoid taking that sort of position in the union because you won't really know what you're talking about. These rules have been essential for dual power movements in the past, and they will serve us well. Dual power groups are ideal to build a better society because they prioritize solving the issues of the people, giving solutions to those exploited by hierarchies, and empowering all the people. Here at the Coalition of Austin Tenants, we believe these tools to be the best at our disposal to improve society, and that is why we are putting them into action. We have a clear plan to foster existing tenants unions, build new ones, and allow tenants to co-own their apartment complexes and avoid rent altogether. Right now is the perfect time because of the COVID-19 Delta variant. Let me explain. In 2020, quarantine made a lot of people jobless, and the Trump administration failed to protect these folks from evictions. As massive amounts of people got pushed in the streets because they couldn't pay their landlords, the local government was overwhelmed with the number of eviction lawsuits that took place. As a result, it took months for the landlords to obtain the right paperwork and let the cops evict violently the most vulnerable members of our communities. At the same time, the housing market crashed because there were less people who could give away 75% of their income for rent just so that they could have a roof over their heads. These events were the perfect soil for the growth of many tenants unions who formed to protect these tenants and those who couldn't afford to pay rent. In solidarity, they organized protests and rent strikes, a form of civil disobedience where you withhold rent legally from parasitic landlords for months at a time. The communities that had a tenants union flourished as a result. Organizing a rent strike allows a tenants union to formulate demands from a position of power instead of a position of weakness. This, in turn, allowed the tenants unions to renegotiate their living conditions, the price of rent, and the lease agreements that allowed the brutal evictions in the first place. A tenants union can hire lawyers to protect rent strikers and bog down the eviction procedures, slowing the process to a halt. A tenants union can find lodging for evicted people and protect them from homelessness. A tenants union can interrupt an ongoing eviction by showing up in large groups and pushing the police out. It is recommended that white cis men take the front lines here, as they're the group least likely to get shot by the police. Now, there's something else that a tenants union does that is very important. It lowers the value of the apartment complex it operates from and the buildings around them. Let me explain. With a rent strike going on and the promise of more in the future, a local landlord can look forwards to diminishing returns from buying an apartment complex. This means that the building is worth less and less the more the tenants union grows in power, size, and reputation. And selling the apartment complex gets much harder for the landlord because potential buyers know they will have to deal with the union as well. This leads to our goal for local unions here in Austin. A group of tenants who don't pay rent during a rent strike could save thousands of dollars per month. If they are well organized and they sign a contract voted by the members of the union, they could buy back the cheaper apartment complex and rid all of the tenants of the burden of paying rent altogether. I mean, you would still have to pay to finance community building projects, hire maintenance staff, and pay property taxes, but the final cost to live somewhere will be greatly reduced. If someone leaves the place to go settle elsewhere, they can give up their contract with the union and they're paid back the price of their share of the co-owned building. Then a new tenant can come in and sign the same exact contract. Easy peasy. When all of the tenants co-own their homes, the tenants union can move to other tasks like helping similar groups to buy back their homes, addressing community problems, and providing housing for all. Doing this will greatly help the local communities who will be inspired to start or join a tenants union, and also lower the rent on buildings that are in the same neighborhood. A building's worth is not measured in the wall's ability to protect you from wind and cold, but rather how much a landlord can expect to profit from the building and local gentrification. Simply having a tenants union in the neighborhood can halt gentrification and cause local rent to drop as the buildings lose value in their owners' eyes and in the eyes of the market. Our goal here at the Coalition of Austin Tenants is to give you the tools you need to build a local tenants union, support these unions, and ultimately provide housing for all in Austin without rent. Our plan is to replicate the rise of tenants union of 2020 in the Riverside area, get the attention of the media with protests and rent strikes, and finally lower the value of the local buildings to allow renters unions to buy them back. We will act in every apartment complex and overwhelm the administration with so many eviction procedures that the local police will be paralyzed. There's a lot of work ahead of us if we want to organize, become empowered by these dual power groups, and overthrow the dominant capitalist hierarchy. We're talking about reinventing our entire society from the ground up while existing hierarchies oppose us with the goal of outliving us. But small victories will empower the local people and then use that power to help even more folks. If we can make our efforts snowball, then we have a chance to stop capitalism before climate change kills us all. Because I'm having none of that. I was a vegan for years to have a longer lifespan, and now the planet has a shorter lifespan than me. Also, all of my favorite people live on Earth. Was I avoiding meat for absolutely no reason? The time to act and organize is now. If we start now, we have a chance of winning in the next few years before climate change becomes irreversible in 2027. You can show this video to other locals as a means of explaining how to start a dual power group in your apartment complex, at your job, or in your community. The term was first used to describe some events of the Russian Revolution of 1997. It's called dual power because at this point in history, there were two big political groups in Russia following the dissolution of the Tsar's brutal regime. The Soviets were a workers' union. They were numerous, driven, and organized. They wanted to create a new and better world, but they weren't in power. On the other side was the Russian Provisional Government, which was new and hadn't established a lot of legitimacy. The Soviets were the ones who had brought down the monarchy, so they understood that the real power in the nation is with the people, so they used that power. The Soviet people took power in 1997 because they had built this structure from the ground up until it rivaled even their own government in legitimacy and influence. If you want to know what you can do to help the union, we will also make instructional videos for the most common actions that you can take in a tenants union. Click here to see the video on the essential actions that a union member like you can take and how those are important to the progress of the dual power group. Quick legality notice. Your landlord cannot legally evict you for being in a tenants union or for taking part in group action. We have linked resources in the description so that you can be informed on your tenants' rights. I learned a lot from those websites. For example, in Texas, a landlord has to return the safety deposit in full to you if you gave them the new address where they can mail you. That's crazy, I never knew that. If they fail to send you the receipts for the repairs done in the flat within 30 days of you leaving, you can sue them. It's a short read and I highly recommend it. Now, that is not to say that you can't get in trouble for unionizing. Landlords fight dirty, and so you will be at risk of their tricks. How much risk you are willing to take in order to improve everyone's living conditions is up to you. I know that many of us hoped we would be Gryffindors when we took the online tests for the first time. Maybe now we get to see how brave we really are.